you. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes of questions. Let's start with the big picture. We hear the defense industry call the procedures of going through the Department of Defense acquisition process the valley of death. Mr. Snellgrove, can you briefly define for the subcommittee what the, quote, valley of death looks like in DoD acquisition? And if you can, quantify its scale in terms of dollars lost?
Thank you for the question, sir. Yeah, the valley of death specifically for small businesses and defense technology startups is, once we provide these small businesses with, in many cases, is a small business innovation research contract, so typically less than $1 million, to assess the feasibility of their technology for DoD use cases. The DoD has the largest SBIR program in government, and they've created essentially a front door for small businesses to engage with the DoD. Unfortunately, we have not created the mechanisms for small businesses to graduate from that program routinely and then scale their technology across the Department of Defense. And as a result of that, they are losing access to hundreds of billions, over $100 billion in potential procurement in each and every annual appropriations bill.
Thank you for that. Ms. Boatner, can you give us an example of how long a non-major defense acquisition program takes? More specifically, how much time does a commercial grade prototype spend on contract negotiations versus research, development, and testing?
Absolutely, apologize. Right, so we've talked about major development programs taking about 11 years. When you're talking about a non-major system and you're focused on commercial, that should be able to be done in a matter of months. I think what you see in reality, though, is that that can take upwards of years. Congress and the department has given streamlined authorities to procure commercially, and what I would tell you is that within the Department of Defense, I think, in response to a risk aversion, a creeping back of those requirements that Congress, intentionally tried to remove. And so while it should only take a shorter amount of time, particularly when you're talking about a smaller system, it could be done in months, it's taking years.
Relatedly, have you seen instances where the scope of the DoD's needs change over time and that ends up extending the procurement process? And if so, do you have an example?
Absolutely. I think across warfighting portfolios, you see that it's referred to as requirements creep. And the requirements process, particularly for larger weapon systems, can take anywhere from 1 to 3 years. So in that 1 to 3 year time period, of course, requirements are going to evolve. New technologies are emerging, new threats are emerging. And so requirements are changing. The problem, though, is that the requirements process is so prescriptive that, to Ms. Oakley's point, the department struggles to respond to those changes with any agility.
So I happen to be meeting with the South Carolina Home Builders Association later today, and they always complain that permitting is costing them up to 35% of the cost of a new build. And if you think about it, that's pretty wild. Between delays and just the regulation, it seems that we're kind of getting to something similar cost-wise in the procurement process. And it's gotten so bad that I guess certain people are saying we're just going to turn it upside down and go out and create something and hope it works out. I recently saw the 60-minute expose on Anduril, and the founder there is just saying, I'm going to build this and then bring it to DoD and tell them why they want it. Mr. Schwartz, has this happened before, or is this just kind of a novel approach?
So it has happened before, and there are a lot of companies that have these great capabilities. And it goes back to, and I think this is the great point, is the technology is out there, the innovation is out there. The problem is acquisition and adoption of the Department of Defense. So when you talk about programs that take 11, 12 years or a requirement process that takes more than a year, one of the big challenges is by the time you finish, it's already obsolete, right? So the more that companies can invest and develop the technologies, the better. But I think what it really drives to really get to the heart of your question is, yes, we should be looking at the commercial markets and buy a lot more commercial, and not just buy commercial. Let's use commercial buying processes to buy it. Let's try to limit all those other regulations that we put on, and we do this to ourselves in the department, that we put on DoD internally that take so long and add all of these contract clauses that companies never deal with.
Thank you for that. I feel like necessity is the mother of invention, and I don't think the Ukrainians are taking 11 years to develop their next drone that they're using in real time. So we need to get better at this. With that, I yield